evening, and how are you? My name is Mika Thompson, and we are here from the Cook County Bar Association. This is our show live on CAN TV. I am your host, and I'm here with my esteemed colleague, attorney Lewis Powell III. Lewis Powell III is currently a professor, adjunct professor at Marshall Law School, in addition to some other law schools, correct?
Yeah, well, thank you for asking. I'm still affiliated with John Marshall, still working with Professor Sang on various projects, and still in the building, as they say.
Okay.
But this upcoming semester, I will be teaching a course in landlord-tenant law at Northern Illinois University, where I graduated for my BA in political science and Master of Public Affairs. And also, Mika, and I'm really excited, I'll be teaching an undergrad class at Northern.
Okay.
So we're going to be busy next semester. I'll be teaching an undergrad introductory political science class.
Very good. So we have a very knowledgeable attorney who has years of practice, and we will be talking about fair housing today. So please call in with your questions. We're talking about fair housing. This is the Cook County Bar Association's live on CAN TV. You can call in on the number that appears at the bottom of your screen. That's 312-738-1060. We are from the Cook County Bar Association. That is the oldest association of African American lawyers and judges in the United States. And we take this time at 6:30 p.m. to bring to you information regarding legal issues and topics of legal import in the Chicago metropolitan city. Okay, so I wanted to first begin with a question regarding the connection of civil rights movement and fair housing. Can you discuss with our audience and who's watching the connection between fair housing and the civil rights movement?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Now, ladies and gentlemen, this is my opinion, and some people may not agree with me, but there are different milestones in the civil rights movement. The milestone to me is the murder of Emmett Till.
Okay.
When Emmett Till was murdered, I believe it was 1955, and actually I was born in 1957. But Mika, when I was in grammar school, my teachers were talking about it as if it just happened. And but actually, time-wise, it actually have. But we don't have to go into the details of the death of Emmett Till. We all know what happened and so forth and so on. He was brutally murdered. But the key point is that his mother made a critical decision, and that was to have an open casket. That open casket was shown at Robert's Temple, which is still existing church,
right,
on roughly 37th in State Street. They had decision to have an open casket. That picture of Emmett Till brutally grotesque body was in Jet magazine, Ebony magazine, and publicized worldwide. Ladies and gentlemen, in my opinion, that jump-started the civil rights movement. This happened in 1955. We rolled into the 60s. In my opinion, the 60s, ladies and gentlemen, saw a different type of black man. Mm-hmm. And when I say black man, ladies and gentlemen, I'm talking about the black woman as well, okay? You saw a black man going into the 60s that was more outspoken. You saw individuals like Bobby Seale, one of the founders of the Black Panthers, Huey Newton, Eldridge Cleaver, Black Panthers, H. Rap Brown, who said, "America, if you don't turn around, we're going to burn you down."
Right.
We saw Malcolm X, and Malcolm X said, "We did not land on Plymouth Rock." What? Plymouth Rock landed on us.
Right.
And then you had my fraternity brother, Dr. Martin Luther King. You had the 60s were a very interesting time period, a time of revolution. There was a popular record called "The Revolution Would Not Be Televised."
Right.
But the fact of the matter is, you had a tension in the African American civil rights movement. You had those that, like Malcolm X said, "If you slap me, I'm going to slap you back." You had Dr. King, who was espousing nonviolence. And you had those two dichotomies going back and forth. Dr. King, some older people remember, he spent a lot of time in the city of Chicago, North Lando specifically, to draw attention to absentee landlords. But that being said, the connection of the civil rights movement is the atmosphere that it created, a revolutionary type of atmosphere where a black man was unafraid to speak their voice. That we're still in this early 60s. Dr. King again was espousing nonviolence. We all know about Selma, how people were brutally beat, so forth and so on. Dr. King was still espousing nonviolence. Toward the end of his career, Mecca, Dr. King really stepped it up in terms of being revolutionary. His last speech, we do know that his last speech, he basically preached his funeral. But what people do not know, his next scheduled speech was entitled "America is Going to Go to Hell."
Wow.
Okay, Dr. King, when he was assassinated in Memphis, was not down there for a civil rights movement march. He was down there to support the black sanitary workers who were primarily black in their fight for low wages and unsanitary conditions. And we know he was killed. When Dr. King was killed, ladies and gentlemen, that jettisoned the civil rights movement. Okay, in terms, I think we have a caller.
Oh, okay. Caller, you're on the air. What is your question? Caller?
Is that me?
Yes.
Oh, thank you so much. My question is, I'm living in a house that has been foreclosed on, and the real estate that's handling the property for the bank gave me a letter, or I signed a letter stating that I would be out of here by December the 7th. And the way it looks as of today, that's not going to happen. I need to know what will transpire next, if you could help me with that.
Did you sign that with a realtor or an attorney?
A realtor.
Okay.
That's a little bit off topic, but I'm still dealing with it.
Okay.
One, you need to get an attorney, okay, to see if they can work an agreement with the lender. Because what I'm afraid of, you might have signed an agreement stating that you agree to move out by a date certain. So you need to get legal representation to see what can be done with that deadline.
So you have more time.
That's what you need to do.
Okay. So continuing in the discussion, and you were saying that Martin Luther King was poised to participate with the sanitation workers.
Right, he was killed in Memphis. We all know what happened. He was killed in Memphis. The point of it is this, ladies and gentlemen. When Dr. King, those of you, and I'm certainly old enough to remember, when Dr. King was killed, what happened? This nation erupted. Detroit went up in flames. Los Angeles, Watts in particular, went up in flames. City of Chicago went up in flames. The West Side particularly was hard hit.
And has really never recovered.
To a certain extent, there's still vacant land on the West Side as a result of burnt down buildings. The point of it is, ladies and gentlemen, the death of Martin Luther King, a man that espoused nonviolence, really tore this nation apart. The powers that be realized that they had to do something. Now, we know in this day and age of filibustering, so forth and so on, the state of Illinois going out of budget for X amount of days, we know under normal circumstances, ladies and gentlemen, it takes a long time to get something passed legislative-wise. But Dr. King was killed, I believe, April the 3rd, April 4th, maybe off on the date.
Yes.
But the point is this. Within several days of his murder, the 1968 Fair Housing Act was passed, okay? Because of the atmosphere, the powers that be, Republicans and the Democrats realized that this nation was on the edge. Because remember, this is a time period of Vietnam. Remember that, Vietnam. You had the internal revolution. The powers that be were not only worried about the external revolution, but the internal revolution. All of the progressive groups, civil rights, radicals, so forth and so on, what you want to call them, were infiltrated by the FBI or the CIA or sister agencies. So this was a time period where there was a lot going on. And the Fair Housing Act, which was enacted in 1968 April, covers sex in terms of discrimination, color, race, national origin, so forth and so on.
Religion.
But Dr. King, by sacrificing his life, really jettisoned the Fair Housing Act. And that is the connection in terms, that's the Reader's Digest version in terms of the civil rights connection with the fair housing.
So all of those things, you're talking about some of these horrific things that happened during the course of that civil rights movement really made it possible to persuade the legislatures to go on and put into place what we now are receiving the benefits of, is this fair housing.
Absolutely. It persuaded them and scared the bejabbers out of me, quite frank with you, in terms that they had to do something and do something soon.
Okay, well, this is the Cook County Bar Association's live on CAN TV show. I am here with my esteemed colleague, Attorney Lewis Powell III, and we are talking about fair housing. Now, if you have any questions pertaining to fair housing or another issue of legal import, please contact us at the Cook County Bar Association. You can check us out at the website. Click on lawyer referral. Now this is cookcountybar.org/lawyer referral. You click on lawyer referral, and there are a list of qualified licensed attorneys in good standing who are members of the Cook County Bar and their area of practice, their contact information, and you can contact them and set up an appointment to speak with them and get answers to your questions. Never hesitate to take advantage of a consultation to get an answer to a necessary question. Do not take action without the proper legal advice. Okay, so our next question for Attorney Powell is, please discuss the enactment of the 1968 Fair Housing Act as far as the legislation, the pieces of legislation.
We actually covered that really
Okay.
in terms of what led toward. The 1968 Act really covers race, religion, color, national origin, so forth and so on. It was amended actually in 1989 to include familiar status. What familiar status is, that deals with the composition, of your household.
Okay.
Really, to be quite frank with you, deals a lot with single family parents.
Okay.
Because landlords are notorious in terms of being hard on families that don't have a man in the house, a single woman with children, with the misconception that a woman without a man in the house cannot control the children.
Gotcha.
Also, it was amended in 1988 to cover disabilities.
Okay.
You cannot discriminate someone on the basis of disabilities.
Okay, so has it ever included sexual orientation?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Now, bear in mind, ladies and gentlemen, there are different places that you can sue.
Gotcha.
The higher profile cases with the more money damages have a tendency to be filed in the federal court.
Gotcha.
You can file in the federal court. You can file in the state court, which is the circuit court. You can file in the state of Illinois, you can file with the Illinois Department of Human Relations. That's on the state agency. Also, you can file HUD, again, that's another agency. And also, you can file with the Cook County Human Rights. Okay, wow. And also there's a separate venue for the city of Chicago. They have their own human rights. So really, there are various venues that you have a valid complaint that you can file.
Okay. And you've already said. And steering, what is that? Can you talk about what that means? Steering as it pertains to the fair housing?
Absolutely. Now, ladies and gentlemen, bear in mind, steering and blockbusting, we'll deal with them at the same time. Neighborhoods change all the time.
That's true.
The west side of Chicago, and those of you from the west side, the west side used to be primarily Jewish. And those of you live in the North Lawndale area, particularly around Douglas Boulevard, there are many former Jewish synagogues because the neighborhood was primarily Jewish. Inglewood, a lot of people don't realize, Inglewood up until like the late 50s, early 60s was primarily white. I'm going to use the example of Roseland to demonstrate or to discuss what steering is. Ladies and gentlemen, what steering is the artificial manipulation of a neighborhood. Again, neighborhoods change all the time.
On its own.
On its own. But when it's manipulated, the only people that win are the realtors. Okay, Roseland, I grew up immediately north of Roseland. The Dan Ryan Expressway, which turns into I-57, separates my neighborhood from Roseland. We started knowing changes in Roseland because, again, my mom and dad bought their house in 1959. Most of the neighbors in my neighborhood bought their house from roughly 57 to 59, 59, so forth and so on. We started noticing the changes across the expressway around 1968. Those you are familiar with Roseland changed dramatically between roughly, again, this is my opinion, 1968 to roughly 1971. What steering is that realtors purposely will steer a particular ethnic group to a particular geographical area. And on purpose, that's all that they will show them. They will not show those realtors in their audience. You have a duty based upon your client's financial capabilities to show what can fit in their pocketbook. But you cannot on your own decide this is the area, the only area that I'm going to show you. That's illegal. And that's what they did in Roseland. Roseland changed overnight. Okay, Rosen is still recovering from what happened because it was artificially manipulated. Again, steering is, we just use black people example, showing black people only Roseland. Blockbusting, which goes hand in hand with steering. What blockbusting is, this is a term art that came in the 60s, going into the 70s. What blockbusting again, using African Americans. You get one African American to buy on a particular block, and then what do you do, Mika? You tell everybody, and you scare, the bejabbers out your neighbors, and that's which causes white flight.
So it's not when you say you tell everybody that this black person is moving in, you're not saying, oh, go next door, you have a new neighbor, and welcome them to the neighborhood. That's not what you're telling them.
You're talking in frank language, okay? Because you and I are not present.
Right.
They're probably using the N-word, saying such and such has moved on your block. You know what that means. This neighbor is about to change. You need to sell quickly. It's called churning because realtors made a fortune because the neighborhood was turning over so quickly. No offense to anybody from Roseland, okay? Roseland is battling, trying to come back. I like what Alderman Bill is doing.
Okay.
I like what Alderman Kerry Austin is doing. They're trying to battle back. But the fact of the matter is, Roseland has been in deterioration since the late 60s because of artificial manipulation. A lot of people may have, no offense to anybody bought in Roseland, some folks that bought in Roseland were not qualified, or they were marginally qualified, meaning if something happened, and we all know, ladies and gentlemen, life happens.
That's true.
You get a hospital bill, that can cause bankruptcy.
Right.
One person loses a job, that can just throw you out of rack.
Right.
A lot of there's still a lot of abandoned houses in Roseland, which are a result of people really being marginally qualified to afford the home. So it results in a destabilization.
Right. And then the number of people that quickly sell, doesn't that deflate the market value?
Absolutely.
It's not the race of it. It's just the number of all of these people in a specific area selling all at once. That's what affects the market value.
Absolutely. And again, a sale is a sale. Those individuals, African Americans, that bought early in the exodus, as we call it, from Roseland, no offense, they may have overpaid for those houses. However, toward the end of the mass exodus, those white folks, unfortunately, would probably sell their homes as cheaply as they could to get out of there. Okay? So nobody wins when it's an artificial manipulation. A case in point, I went to Finger High School, probably means nothing to you. My mother went to Finger High School. She was one of the few blacks that went there. Okay, that's another story. However, when I went to Finger in 1971, now again, these are unofficial stats, Finger was probably roughly like 60% black, 40% white.
Okay.
By the time I graduated in 1975, Finger was, which is a great school back in those days, was about 99.9 African American, maybe 1% white, maybe a fraction of Hispanics at that particular time. But that just shows you the mass turnover of a neighborhood. Just looking at that as an example.
Okay. All right, so we have the definition of blockbusting and the definition of steering. And these conducts, that's illegal.
It is definitely illegal. If a realtor is called, my mentor is F. Willis Caruso, who probably litigated more fair housing in any cases than anybody in history. My other mentor is Professor Michael Sang. Professor Caruso is really the one I really believe that coined the term blockbusting and steering, because he was catching real estate offices left and right in the 70s in terms of steering and blockbusting.
And so that is a lawsuit that can be filed against the realtor firm.
Everybody gets sued.
Wow.
Okay, everybody in sight that has some liability. If the homeowner has something to do, but usually 9 times out of 10, you're really nailing the realtor, okay?
Okay.
in terms of steering and blockbusting.
Zoom blockbusting. Okay. So if you're tuning in, please give us a call. We're at 312-738-1060. This is the Cook County Bar Association's live on CAN TV, and we're talking about fair housing with my esteemed colleague, Louis Powell III. Okay. Our next question is regarding redlining. Can you explain what that is as it pertains
Absolutely.
to fair housing?
Ladies and gentlemen, redlining is critical. If you can't get the mortgage, you can't purchase the house. The person may want to sell to you, but if you can't get the mortgage, you can't buy the house. If you can't get the insurance, you cannot buy the house. Redlining stands for the simple principle that when the mortgage industry or the lender industry with appraisals, because you can play games with appraisals, if they make a conscious decision to not loan in a particular area, that's called redlining. Not loan, and also not give insurance policies in a particular area, okay? And also on purpose to hold down the appraisals in a particular area. That's redlining because they're consciously making the decision not to loan to people of color. We just use that as an example. That prevents them from getting a mortgage.
Now, if there has been severe weather damage in a particular area and the banks decide that it's no longer financially feasible for them to loan, that's not the same thing.
That's not the same thing.
Okay.
But bear in mind, we had a fair housing case really in the 90s where we caught them dead to right in North Lawndale where they denied this senior citizen, she was a middle-aged person. She only filed one particular claim, and they tried to hold it against her in terms of insuring her property. Actually, they stopped insuring her. Wow. And she came to us, and we sued them, and we got some money from them. Okay. We caught them dead to right. You know, just because you filed one claim, that's not the end of the world. Right. That should not be held against you. And how we was able to really convince them that it was in their best interest because we had the statistics to show, we're not going to mention the insurance company, that this insurance company had practically stopped insuring property in the North Loudoun area, and they knew it. So they had to settle with us.
Got you. Okay. That is very interesting. And this is something, is this recent or was back?
This is in the 90s.
Wow. Okay. Wow. That's interesting. Okay. And the next question regarding differential treatment of loan applications based on race.
Give you the Reader's Digest version. Okay. Mortgage lenders, mortgage brokers, so forth and so on, are masters in trying to help you if they can. If they want to make the deal, if they want you to look good at the loan committee, if they see some blips on your credit, then they ask you, "What, Mr. Powell, what happened?" Well, what happened was this particular time I got sick, I lost my job, so forth and so on. Off giving you the opportunity to explain the credit mishaps on your loan app. Okay, the differential treatment is this. The mortgage broker takes the time. We just use white and black as an example. Just need it for example.
Right.
The white person, they take the time to question them, to draw out particular reasons as to why they have credit problems in order to justify it. The black person, they do not do the same thing. They just, oh, well, unfortunately, we really like to loan to you, but your credit has, these different, mishaps, so forth and so on. Why don't you come back to us in a couple of years that you clear up your credit? But that's what we're talking about, differential treatment, when one category of person is basically helped to give up less explanation, and another category of people are not given that same opportunity.
Same opportunity. So it's all about making sure that everybody's treated the same when it
That's fair housing.
Fair housing. Okay. Reasonable modifications. What are that, and when do we need to be concerned about having reasonable modifications?
Reader's Digest version. Take reasonable modification and reasonable accommodation. Reasonable modification, ladies and gentlemen, is a physical change. Say you're a senior citizen and you ask for grab bars to be installed in your bathroom. Okay. That's reasonable, isn't it? It doesn't cost too much. And if it's reasonable, the landlord, this for tenants, is obligated to put the bars in. Depending on the circumstances, he may or may not charge. But for example purposes, a reasonable modification is a physical change. Reasonable accommodation is not uncommon in leases to say no dogs. However, if you are visually impaired and have a CNI dog, a dog is not a
option,
it's a service animal. So a reasonable accommodation would be that you allow that particular person to have the dog.
Okay. Well, we only have 1 minute left, so we want to take this opportunity to give Attorney Lewis Powell the opportunity to make his closing remarks.
Fair housing is still alive. What we're seeing now is not as blatant as it used to be. However, it's very subtle. What we're seeing now is the purpose disinvestment in African American communities. That's where fair housing is going to, in terms of the purpose disinvestment in black communities.
Okay. Well, thank you, Attorney Powell, for coming in and discussing fair housing with us. This is the Cook County Bar Association's live on CAN TV. Tune in this time Monday, 6:30, and we will be discussing another legal issue. Thank you again for tuning in, and have a good evening.